No one remembered when the laughter began, but everyone remembered when it stopped. The station floated above the dead world like a rusted crown. Its hull scarred by micrometeor impacts and old battles. No one bothered to record anymore. Inside, Observation Ring 7. A mixed delegation of species watched the human demonstration with polite amusement and a growing sense of unease. The human representative stood behind a mounted weapon that looked less like a tool and more like an industrial accident. All steel teeth and rotating barrels. He called it a rotary cannon. He said it smiled when it fired. And the translators struggled with the phrasing. At first there was laughter. The avian delegates clicked in disbelief. The Charathi flexed their frills in what passed for humor, and even the stone-skinned Urin rumbled approval at what they assumed was exaggeration. 3,000 rounds per minute sounded absurd to species whose standard infantry weapons overheated. After a dozen shots, the human just smiled, hands resting lightly on the firing grips. The test target was a decommissioned assault drone, layered in composite armor designed to withstand orbital debris. The station AI confirmed all safety protocols. Energy shields were active, pressured doors sealed, and medical staff on standby. Still, the human asked once more if everyone was ready. His voice calm and almost gentle. When the trigger was pulled, the weapon laughed. It was not a single sound, but a tearing roar, a continuous scream of metal being born and dying at the same time. The barrels spun into invisibility, and the air itself seemed to flinch as 3,000 rounds per minute became a physical presence. The drone did not explode. It dissolved. Its armor shredded into vapor and fragments that rang against the containment field like hail. The laughter in the observation ring died instantly. Several delegates recoiled, not from fear alone but from confusion, as their senses tried to understand how something so small could erase something so strong. The human released the trigger after 3 seconds, and silence rushed in like a held breath finally released. Only then did anyone notice the smell. Hot metal and ionized air. The human looked back at the delegation, his smile gone, replaced by something older and harder. "This is why we stopped laughing," he said softly. The council demanded an explanation, and the human was prepared to give one. He began not with schematics or tactical doctrine, but with history. Humans did not invent the rotary cannon for war among the stars. He said they invented it because they were afraid. On Earth, long before first contact, humans learned that fear could be measured in seconds. Predators charged, enemies advanced, and the difference between survival and extinction often came down to how much force could be delivered before the other side closed the distance. 3,000 rounds per minute was not about excess, it was about certainty. The delegates listened. In uneasy silence, the human spoke of sieges, where laughter echoed through smoke-filled streets. Not joyful laughter, but the manic sound of weapons firing until the barrels glowed. He spoke of pilots who trusted that sound more than armor, and of soldiers who slept better knowing that if the laughter started, nothing would reach them alive. A Charathi tactician finally interrupted, asking why humans did not abandon such weapons once they reached the stars. The human paused before answering. "Because the universe is bigger than our fear, and that means it can hold bigger monsters." He gestured to the empty space beyond the viewport. "Out there are things that do not negotiate, do not retreat, and do not understand mercy. When humans encountered them, we did not laugh anymore. We listened, and we remembered what kept us alive before." The human explained that 3,000 rounds per minute was not even the upper limit. It was simply the point where psychology broke. At that rate, enemies stopped advancing, stopped coordinating, and sometimes stopped thinking altogether. The sound alone rewired instincts millions of years old. The delegates exchanged glances. Their cultures built on shields, diplomacy, and limited escalation. For the first time they understood that humans escalated by default, not out of cruelty, but out of survival. When the human finished, no one asked about treaties or restrictions. They asked how many ships carried such weapons. The human answered honestly, "Enough." The first galactic war humans fought was not against an empire, but against a tide. The Keth swarm arrived without warning, biological ships pouring through unstable jump points like blood through torn flesh. They did not respond to hails, did not retreat from losses, and did not stop. The Allied fleets formed defensive lines and fired until their weapons overheated. Energy lances carved glowing scars through the void. Missiles bloomed like artificial stars, and still the swarm advanced. Ships were boarded, crews torn apart, and entire formations collapsed in minutes. Then the human escort group arrived. Late by council standards, but exactly on time by human ones. Their ships looked crude, armored like industrial machines rather than elegant warcraft. Mounted along their hulls were rows of rotary cannons, scaled up until the barrels were the size of transit tunnels. When the swarm closed in, the humans did not maneuver. They anchored their formation and opened fire. Space itself seemed to scream as thousands of cannons laughed in unison. 3,000 rounds per minute per barrel became millions across the fleet. A storm of kinetic death. Biological armor shredded, regenerative tissue failed, and the swarm faltered for the first time in recorded history. Creatures bred to ignore pain suddenly knew fear. They turned, collided, and tore each other apart trying to escape the sound. The Allied fleets watched in stunned silence as the human line held, then advanced, where energy weapons burned, kinetic weapons erased. The swarm did not adapt, because there was nothing to adapt to. Only overwhelming force applied faster than biology could respond. When the battle ended, the void was filled with drifting organic debris and cooling metal casings. The humans powered down their weapons, and the laughter stopped. Medical ships moved in, rescue teams followed, and the galaxy realized it was still alive. From that day on, no one questioned why humans carried such weapons. They asked instead what it would take to make humans use them again. Peace did not last. It never does. Years later, a coalition world attempted to seize human manufacturing hubs, believing that cutting supply lines would neutralize the threat humans posed. They underestimated two things: human redundancy and human memory. The first shots were precise, orbital strikes aimed at factories and shipyards. The humans absorbed the losses and said nothing. Then the laughter began. Planetary defense platforms rotated into position, their cannons tracking not ships but entire orbiter lanes. When the invading fleet entered range, 3,000 rounds per minute tore through shields, calibrated for energy impacts. Kinetic rounds did not care about harmonics or frequencies, only mass and velocity. The invaders tried to retreat, but retreat requires space, and space was filled with metal. Ships came apart in layers, hulls peeled, reactors breached, and command structures vanished in seconds. The laughter did not slow until the sky was empty. On the ground, the sound carried through atmosphere, a distant thunder that made civilians weep, and soldiers dropped their weapons. Human infantry did not advance immediately. They waited, letting the sound do the work, letting fear travel faster than any broadcast. When silence finally returned, the humans offered terms: no occupation, no tribute, only one condition: never make us laugh like that again. The message spread faster than the battle footage. Across the galaxy, military planners revised doctrines, diplomats softened language, and weapons designers abandoned purely defensive philosophies. The laughter had turned inward, not as a threat, but as a warning. Back on the station, the human finished. Historian looked at the silent delegation. "We do not enjoy this," he said. "If we did, we would never stop." He explained that humans measured victory not by destruction but by the absence of necessity. 3,000 rounds per minute was not a boast. It was a reminder of what happened when all other options failed. The laughter stopped because someone survived to turn off the weapon. The council understood then that the real danger was not the rotary cannon. It was the restraint required to build it and not use it. To know exactly how much force you could unleash, and choose not to. As the meeting adjourned, no one joked. No one laughed. They left with a new understanding of humanity. Humans were not the loudest species in the galaxy. They were the ones who knew how loud things could get, and why silence mattered afterward. And somewhere in a secured armory, barrels, cooled casings were cleaned, and the laughing waited, just in case.